We begin with the coronavirus situation in Japan. Local leaders are urging the central government to take tougher measures against the virus as cases surge due to new variants. Governors from all 47 prefectures held talks online on Monday morning. The effectiveness of the current antivirus measures was on the agenda.
The central government should consider issuing a nationwide state of emergency as soon as possible, after providing sufficient financial resources to support prefectural governments.
We have to think of the variant as completely different from the past ones. Otherwise, our response won't be enough. We need to take more drastic measures.
The governors agreed on an emergency proposal that calls on the central government to reduce the number of infections enough that they won't easily rebound again. They want help securing staff for hospitals dealing with an influx of patients. The health ministry says a record 1,152 people are being treated for serious COVID-19 symptoms. The governors also want to see the vaccination drive accelerate. The ministry says it'll distribute enough doses by the end of the week to finish inoculating the country's 4.8 million medical workers. It's aiming to have Japan's 36 million seniors fully vaccinated by the end of July. The government announced a state of emergency for Tokyo, Osaka, and 2 other prefectures late last month. The measure is now set to be extended until the end of May, and 2 more prefectures will be included. Tokyo metropolitan government officials reported 573 new infections on Monday. It said the number of seriously ill patients has risen to 78. The pandemic dominated Monday's debate in the national diet. Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide apologized for extending the state of emergency, but pledged to hold a safe Olympics in July. Opposition lawmakers criticized him for failing to contain the surge in cases of COVID-19 during the initial 17-day emergency period.
You promised to protect the lives and well-being of the people. You must be held responsible for failing to save lives in Osaka and the whole Kansai region.
The government has supported adding 800 hospital beds since April, but I'm sorry about the dire situation that is unfolding in the area.
Thousands of athletes from around the world are set to compete in the upcoming Olympics and Paralympics, but no spectators will be allowed from overseas. Opposition members grilled Suga about the financial burden the government could face because of lost ticket sales.
How much of a revenue loss are you expecting if there are no domestic spectators? And how much taxpayer money will be needed to cover the deficit?
Suga avoided answering the question directly.
I understand the Tokyo Organizing Committee is preparing for the Games with various scenarios in mind. Regarding spectators, we would like to further examine the coronavirus situation at home and abroad in order to hold a safe and secure Games.
Organizers have said they'll make a final decision in June on the number of domestic spectators that'll be allowed. Before the pandemic hit, officials had expected to sell around 10 million tickets and generate over $800 million in revenue. Meanwhile, organizers have announced that IOC President Thomas Bach has postponed a visit to Japan due to the continuing state of emergency. He'd been expected to arrive in the country next week. NHK's latest opinion poll shows the approval rating for Prime Minister Suga's cabinet has dropped to the lowest level since he assumed office in September. 35% of those surveyed approved of the cabinet's performance. That's down 9 percentage points from last month. The disapproval rate was 43%, up 5 points. The results are based on responses from more than 1,200 people polled between Friday and Sunday. They were also asked about the government's coronavirus response. Over half of respondents said they believe the decision to extend and expand the current state of emergency will be effective at preventing the spread of infections. About 30% said the move doesn't go far enough. 7% said they believe it won't be effective at all. When it comes to vaccinations, only 9% said the rollout is going smoothly, while 82% said progress is slow. Less than 3% of Japan's population has received at least one dose. On the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics, 49% of respondents said the Games should be canceled. 23% said they should be held without spectators, and 19% said they should go ahead with a limited number of spectators. India is keeping strict measures in place against the coronavirus, which has put the country's healthcare system under severe strain. Authorities in New Delhi have extended the lockdown in the capital despite a recent fall in new cases. The curfew was set to expire on Monday, but will now continue until May 17th. Delhi Metro has suspended all of its lines for the next week. About 6 million people use the network daily. Monday's lockdown extension is the third since the first one was announced last month. About 13,000 new cases were reported in the capital on Monday. That's under half the peak of over 28,000 marked on April 21st. Meanwhile, more states are imposing restrictions as the virus spreads from cities to the countryside, where medical systems are vulnerable. Opposition lawmakers and medical experts are calling on Prime Minister Narendra Modi to declare another nationwide lockdown. Health authorities in India reported more than 3,700 fatalities and over 366,000 new infections on Monday. The leader of Japan's main opposition party says his lawmakers won't vote on a draft revision of Japan's immigration law unless officials determine how a Sri Lankan woman died while in detention. The woman in her 30s was being held at an immigration facility in Nagoya at the time of her death in March. She was being held for overstaying her visa. Her family is calling for more details surrounding her death. The Immigration Services Agency said in an interim report that she'd been diagnosed with an illness and was given medication. The leader of the Constitutional Democratic Party referred to the issue in a lower house committee meeting on Monday.
Fatal cases occur at the Immigration Bureau about once every 5 or 10 years, and every time it's cloaked in darkness. These immigration cases, which lack respect for human rights, keep being repeated. We must get to the truth of this matter first.
Edano said his party will refuse to hold a vote on the draft legislation because the Justice Ministry has failed to provide a full accounting of the woman's death. The government drafted the revision in response to the rising number of foreigners detained at immigration facilities. The draft would allow deportees who refuse to leave Japan to stay with family members or supporters if they meet certain conditions. The proposed revision would also enable authorities to deport anyone who's applied for refugee status 3 times, even if their applications are still being processed. Regions of forests and diverse wildlife on 4 remote southwestern islands of Japan are likely to be added to the list of UNESCO World Natural Heritage Sites. The International Union for Conservation of Nature is an advisory body for UNESCO. Japan's Environment Ministry says the body has given the regions the highest evaluation in its 4-stage scale after conducting a field study. Japan's government has nominated the series of sites totaling 43,000 hectares for World Heritage registration. The site spans the islands of Amami Oshima and Tokunoshima in Kagoshima Prefecture, the northern part of Okinawa's main island, and Iriomote Island, also in Okinawa Prefecture. The government describes the site as a precious area of biodiversity with unique species such as the Amami rabbit and the Iriomote cat.
I really welcome this wonderful news, as the coronavirus pandemic keeps bringing gloomy news.
With the help of villagers, we'd like to make the site more appealing.
A UNESCO committee is expected to add the regions to the list at its meeting in July. If registered, the regions will be Japan's 5th World Natural Heritage Site. It's time now for a check on world weather. People in parts of Europe, including Germany and France, had midsummer-like hot weather during the weekend. Our meteorologist Sayaka Mori has the details.
Hello there. It's hard to believe it's already May. In fact, it's already like midsummer in parts of Europe. We saw the high reaching the 30-degree mark in parts of France as well as Germany. It was about 33 degrees in parts of France on Saturday, but because of the warmer conditions, a couple of deadly avalanches occurred in the country. Meanwhile, many people went outside. Take a look at this video from Germany. It was a sunny Sunday in Heidelberg, a scientific hub in Germany, where highs reached the upper 20s Celsius. Many people headed outdoors into the warmer weather. Some were seen getting some sun, while others were near the water with their pets. The falling number of coronavirus cases has led to officials easing restrictions, allowing people to have a little more freedom to enjoy the weather. But a significant cool down is in the forecast. We have a long frontal system stretching from the south to the north. This system will drag frigid air, cold air from the north, so temperatures will plummet significantly. Wet weather is expected for the western half of Europe, including France and Germany, and parts of the UK saw more than 100 millimeters of rainfall in just one day, but London will see quite dry conditions on Tuesday. Rainy weather is a forecast in Paris and Berlin. Temperature in Berlin could drop down to the teens as we go into Wednesday. Meanwhile, we are watching this tropical system called Andres. Andres was the first named storm of the season for the Eastern Pacific, and it also the strongest, or rather, it's the earliest tropical system that formed over the Eastern Pacific on record. This system will likely weaken over the waters. Meanwhile, rain is still hitting the southwestern islands of Japan. A rainy season front will likely head towards the north, reaching Kyushu on Wednesday.
The group Hamas says it fired rockets at Israel after Palestinians and Israeli police clashed in Jerusalem Monday. A shutdown of a U.S. fuel pipeline extends for a third day after a cyber attack by a criminal group known as Dark Side. In Afghanistan, a bomb explosion on a bus in Kandahar kills at least 11 people and wounds many more. Violence has been on the rise as foreign forces prepare to leave the country. And the military in Chad has declared victory over rebels, but the group says it does not know of an end to fighting.
Israel has launched airstrikes against militant targets in the Gaza Strip after rockets were fired from the territory towards Jerusalem. Palestinian officials in Gaza have said 20 people, including children, have died in the strikes. The past few days have seen the worst violence in Jerusalem for years, with more than 300 Palestinians wounded in confrontation with Israeli police outside the Al-Aqsa Mosque on Monday. The FBI says a hacking group known as Dark Side is behind a ransomware cyber attack on America's largest fuel pipeline. It carries around 45% of supplies to the East Coast. And about 100 Roman Catholic churches in Germany are holding blessings for same-sex couples in defiance of the Vatican. Thousands of priests have signed a petition describing the official stance as hurtful to gay churchgoers.